Hello, today is a Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. There's interesting news article on the Washington Post. From now on, I will try to read more of the Washington Post articles. The title today is It's Just Not Sustainable. DC restaurants pushed to the brink. I've been to the Washington D.C. once for a week for on business trip back in 2006 when I was working working at a KT satellite division as an engineer. I went to the satellite convention there and met a lot of interesting people on the floor, and I just enjoyed Washington D.C. There are Smithsonian museums and all sorts of buildings and monuments reflecting a pool, a reservoir, something like that. And also, I jogged there for at the university, Washington University, I think, Georgetown University. I think it's Georgetown University, something like that. The white people go there and they have a good medical college. And I also went to the black university. Is that a Georgetown University? Not sure. It's been a while. And let's delve in because I don't have much time. It's just not sustainable. DC restaurants pushed to the brink. In the wake of wage hikes and government layoffs, some owners say they can't keep treading water. Today at 12 p.m. ETT, 11-minute read. The last hurrah at Brooklyn's finest with Stephanie Coleman, wife of co-owner Tony Tamildon, being comforted by longtime friends Danica Petrosius and Lori Hamilton at a crowded bar. Deb Lindsay for the Washington Post. By Warren Rojas, Tim Carmen, and Emily Hale. What you created here was really special. A father stops to tell Brooklyn's finest co-owner Tony Tamildon while herding his two school-age kids out the restaurant's door on a bustling Friday night. This restaurant has given us so many happy nights. Herding his two school-age kids out the restaurant's door, Tamildon puts down his tumbler of Irish whiskey and throws his arm around the guy's shoulders, assuring the bummed-out well-wisher, one of many flooding back into the Northeast Washington hub in recent weeks for the last hurrah, that it's not his fault the decade-old eatery is shuttering. I just couldn't cut people, and that's what we should have done, Tamildon says of the minimum wage-related pressures that ultimately forced his hand to close the restaurant on Sunday. I thought things would change. The wistfulness of what could have been seems to spirit Tamildon away for a few seconds. A swig of powers snaps him right back. Wistfulness of what could have been seems to spirit Tamildon away for a few seconds. I'm hanging in there, Tamildon assures everyone within earshot. Welcoming them all to visit him at his H Street dive bar, The Pug. But that, of course, wouldn't be the same to neighbors. There are so few places like this, says Trevor Crowell, a self-described regular. He bills the critically acclaimed corner spot as an unpretentious go-to where he could grab a burger or beer with friends on a whim. Crowell is also concerned that nearby City-State Brewing Corporation will soon fold after it announced in late February that it quit producing beer. He builds. That's an interesting expression, right? Here, right here. He builds, right, burger on a whim. Self-described regular. Self-described regular. Customers flocked to Brooklyn's finest before it closed. Deb Lindsay for the Washington Post. Corn attorney Tumbleton chats with customers. From left, Leslie Page, Dennis Rowe, and Christy Diane after their meal. Brooklyn's finest is one of dozens of DC restaurants expected to close this year, each with a different set of circumstances leading to its demise. Some factors, inflation, rising rents, crime, pandemic-related debt, are not limited to Washington, but some are. The thousands of government workers who find themselves in unemployment lines, their discretionary income for dining suddenly zeroed out. Voters approved a ballot initiative in 2022 to phase out the lower minimum wage for tipped workers by 2027. That decision has become public enemy number one for many restaurants. That stair-step increases in the tipped minimum wage have added hundreds of thousands of dollars to a restaurant's payroll costs, operators say, leading to widespread and widely unpopular service charges while cutting into already thin profit margins. Initiative 82 has become such an albatross to owners that the Restaurant Association Metropolitan Washington has launched a campaign to repeal it, as first reported by Axios. The legislation has yet been introduced. No legislation has yet been introduced by the D.C. Council to roll back the initiative, but Council member Anita Barnes, DAT Democratic at large, has been listening to people on both sides of I-82, sympathetic to the economic problems facing workers and employees alike. Democratic at large, right? Democratic at large. Democrat. Voters approved a ballot initiative in 2022 to phase out the lower minimum wage for tipped workers by 2027. That decision has become public number one for many restaurateurs, right? For many restaurateurs. The stair-step increases in the tipped minimum wage have had hundreds of thousands of dollars to a restaurant's payroll costs, operator says. The stair-step increase in the tipped minimum wage. Okay, so they increased the minimum wage, right? Restaurants. Stair-step increase. Payroll costs. The initiative 82 has become Kevin Shavos, spokesman for Barnes, says she does not support a repeal but is considering all options, including freezing the tipped minimum wage at $10 an hour. Something has to be done just because of the damage that has been happening to the restaurant industry, he says. Tom Alden, who began his hospitality career 46 years ago by washing dishes and frying chicken at fast food chain Roy Rogers, says navigating the local restaurant scene has been particularly challenging lately. Between the bunker mentality he suspects is keeping some diners home post coronavirus shutdowns and the annual tipped staff pay raises, Tumbleton says treading water has been exhausting. If your customer base is shrinking and your payroll is doubling, tripling with the I-82, all of those things just make it too big a hill to climb, he says. Pre-pandemic, Tumbleton says the growth potential at the easygoing restaurant that he launched in June 2014 alongside executive chef Shannon Troncoso and co-founder John Solomon seemed unlimited. Before the lockdown, it was incredible, Tumbleton says, recounting how at his most prosperous, Brooklyn's finest would be packed for dinner at 4 p.m., then another crowd would file in around 9 p.m. Now we just do one turn, he laments. And it's not because of Primrose and Brooklyn Pint, nearby restaurants, because they are also doing one turn instead of two, right? I'm back to my dorm in the suburban area of Seoul City. It just borders with Incheon City. I am very near to the Oryudong역 station. That's just one stop away from Incheon. I'm gonna finish reading this article starting where I just left off this morning. Initiative 82 has become such an albatross to owners that the Restaurant Association Metropolitan Washington has launched a campaign to repeal it, as first reported by Axios. No legislation has yet been introduced by the DC Council to roll back the initiative, but Council member Anita Bonds, the Democratic at large, right? Democratic at large, right? Has been listening to people on both sides of I-82, sympathetic to the economic problems facing workers and employers alike. Kevin Chavos, spokesman for Bonds, says she does not support a repeal, but is considering all options, including freezing the tipped minimum wage at $10 an hour. Something has to be done just because of the damage that has been happening to the restaurant industry, he says. Tumbleton, who began his hospitality career 46 years ago by washing dishes and frying chicken at fast food chain Roy Rogers, says navigating the local restaurant scene has been particularly challenging lately. Between the bunker mentality he suspects is keeping some diners home post-coronavirus shutdowns and the annual tipped staff pay raises, Tumbleton says treading water has been exhausting. If your customer base is shrinking and your payroll is doubling, tripling with the I-82, all of those tripling with the I-82, all of those things just made it too big a hill to climb, he says. Tripling, right? Tripling. Pre-pandemic, Tumbleton says the growth potential at the easygoing restaurant that he launched in June 2014 alongside executive chef Shannon Troncaso and co-founder John Solomon seemed unlimited. Before the lockdown, it was incredible, Tumbleton says, recounting how at its most prosperous, Brooklyn's finest would be packed for dinner at 7 p.m., then another crowd would file in around 9 p.m. File in. That's good expression, man. File in, file in. Yeah. Another crowd would file in around 9 p.m. Why? I wonder why. Now we just do one turn, he laments. And it's not because of Prime Rose and Brooklyn Pint, nearby restaurants, because they are also doing one turn instead of two, right? Now we are here, right? Now we are just do one turn, he laments. Now we just do one turn, he laments. When Brooklyn's finest served lunch and dinner 7 days a week, Tomilton says he had 46 people on staff. After sales plummeted, shrinking from $2.9 million in 2019 to $1.6 million in 2023, Tomilton says he begrudgingly slimmed down to 44 workers, and shutting down his Brooklyn spot won't spare him from having to shake things up at the Pug in a few weeks to cover the pending $2 per hour wage hike for tipped employees, right? Tipped employees. If 82 doesn't get passed or repealed in July, my payroll is going to go up 60 grand a year. That's 2 months of sales, he says, of the dire threat to his 6-person operation on H Street. It's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, man. It's just not sustainable. Tipped employees, it's just not sustainable. Bar Charlie. Co-owners Gordon Banks and Jackie Greenbaum in front of Bar Charlie in 2019. Deb Lindsay for the Washington Post. They look like a husband and wife to me. Jackie Greenbaum understands the stresses that I-82 has put upon small neighborhood restaurants like Brooklyn's finest. She and business partner Gordon Banks operate El Chucho, Bar Charlie, and Little Caucus, and each has seen labor costs increase as a result. Banks has crunched the numbers, right? For each $2 increase in the tipped minimum wage, the combined payroll at the 3 restaurants increases annually by about $250,000 or around $83,000 per restaurant. Wow, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. Combined payroll, right? Combined payroll. When I-82 was passed, the tipped minimum wage was $5.35 per hour. Now it's $10 an hour, with another $2 increase scheduled in July. According to Banks' analysis, the payroll at each restaurant has increased by $208,000 since the initiative kicked in. Greenbaum says, right? Kicked in. Combined payroll, right? The tipped minimum wage, in the tipped minimum wage. Banks has crunched the numbers, right? It has crunched the numbers. I crunched the numbers, and it's not sustainable. Three payroll bumps exclude increase in the minimum wage for non-tipped employees, Greenbaum says. In July 2022, before the passage of I-82, the regular minimum stood at $16.10. It's now $17.50, with another 45-cent increase coming in July. To cover the increased costs, restaurateurs have relied on a combination of strategies: raising menu prices, cutting staff, swallowing the costs, or adding a service charge to checks. Wow, that's good expression, man. This is good expression. To cover the increased costs, restaurateurs have relied on a combination of strategies: raising menu price, column, raising menu prices, cutting staff, swallowing the costs, or adding a service charge to checks. To cover the increased costs, restaurateurs have relied on a combination of strategies, raising, for example, raising menu prices, swallowing the costs, or adding a service charge to checks, or cutting staff, right? Cutting staff. A combination of strategies: raising menu prices, cutting staff, swallowing the costs, or adding a service charge to checks. The latter strategy has become divisive as diners find themselves confused and angry about fees that add 20% or more to bills. 20%? America is going crazy, man. America is going crazy. We are all scrambling to try to figure out how to cover the costs and alienate customers the least, Greenbaum notes. The bar at Little Caucus, Dix D. Varian for the Washington Post. Restaurateurs are not necessarily experts at this type of complicated analysis. They should assessments and strategies, she adds. Most of us are just small business owners with limited skill sets as business people. I'm lucky that I came from a business background, but my God, when I think of all the mom and pop places or mom and pop shops, mom and pop places, or even perhaps a bit more experienced but still young single spot indie restaurant chef owners, I am just so pessimistic that we as an industry are capable of addressing it before failing, right? Young single spot, yeah, single spot indie restaurant chef owners, single spot. Full service restaurants, Greenbaum says, were built on a decades-old model, right? Decades-old model, built on decades-old model. Built on a decades-old model in which diner tips offset part of labor costs. Voters upended the model without understanding how it would affect the restaurants they love. Voters upended the model, right? Why is that not all restaurants? Understandable how catastrophic that is, she asks. Unless you think that we are all lying and we make a ton of money. Quantifying the damage is difficult, crunching the numbers. The local restaurant association says that 73 establishments closed last year, a figure based on crowdsourced information, such as news stories. But the number could be higher based on statistics from the DC Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration. Last year, an ABCA spokeswoman noted in an email 101 restaurants and taverns canceled their liquor licenses. A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means the business simply stopped serving alcohol, right? A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means the business simply stopped serving alcohol. A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means the business canceled serving alcohol, simply stopped serving alcohol. Those 101 cancellations last year represent a 58% increase over the licenses canceled in 2023. Wow. They are also just 3 less than all the restaurant and tavern cancellations in 2020. When the pandemic did its worst damage to the hospitality industry, right? To the hospitality industry. The worst damage to a hospitality industry. The hospitality, when the pandemic did its worst damage to the hospitality industry. From left, Amelia Sizemore, Molly Wilder, and Logan Dwyer have dinner on one of the last nights at Brooklyn's Finest. Deb Lindsay for the Washington Post. Tony Tomaldon cleans off a table at Brooklyn's Finest. Hey man, just contact me. I would be happy to join you and help you manage the restaurant. I'm a diligent worker and I have a administrative, sales, and IT engineering background. I will retire in 3 years' time, man. I'm looking for a job in 3 years out, right? Tomaldon's slashing or cutting staff mirrors a pattern across the district in the second half of 2024. Starting in July, after the tipped minimum wage increased to $10 an hour, the full-service leisure and the hospitality market began to shed jobs. It lost hundreds of them for the 5 straight months last year, based on seasonally adjusted numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It started to recover only in December when the industry added 303 jobs. Part of the issue with restaurants like Brooklyn's Finest is that they are in neighborhoods with low population densities, says John Asadurian, a retail real estate broker in Washington. Because of Washington's height limits, communities such as Brooklyn have a smaller pool of potential diners to keep restaurants afloat when economic conditions force people to cut back on spending, right? Afloat. Keep restaurants afloat. Keep restaurants afloat. These diners may also choose to spend their discretionary income instead on restaurants in nearby neighborhoods with more robust and trendy dining scenes, such as Union Market, Noma, or Shaw. Asadorian says. It makes sense, right? I've been to Noma, right? Noma Museum. MoMA, I think MoMA. Museum of Modern Art and Science, something like that. I've been there, DC, once. What? Yeah, sorry. To cut back on spending, right? To cut back on the spending. More robust and trending dining scenes, such as more trendy and robust dining scenes. Cut back on spending. Spend their discretionary income. The pandemic also had yo-yo effect on communities and the businesses they support. Real estate experts say, at first, as downtown buildings shut down, office staff and other non-essential workers spent more time in their neighborhoods, which was a boost to businesses, says Tracy Hayden Law, a fellow at Brookings Metro who tracks commercial real estate and development. Hamilton incidentally says Brooklyn's finest didn't benefit from the shift. We are ringing half of what we did before the lockdown. There's a certain bunker mentality that was starting to be a fact of life in general. But return to office mandates, including one from the federal government, have shifted the workforce back to traditional office spaces, cutting into the money people once spent in their neighborhoods, real estate expert says. What? Real estate experts say, right? It says say. What's more, the Trump administration has been downsizing the federal government. Numbers are difficult to come by because of legal challenges to many of the firings and layoffs, but according to the U.S. Office of the Chief Financial Officer, the federal workforce in Washington is projected to decline by 40,000 employees or 21% by fiscal 2029, largely because of the reduced workforce. The city has significantly revised its financial forecasts for the next several years, projecting that the district's revenue will decline by an average of $342 million annually. It all adds up, restaurateurs and real estate professionals say, to jittery Washingtonians who are reluctant to spend on luxuries such as dining out. Right? It all adds up. It all adds up, man. It all adds up. It all adds up. It all adds up. It all adds up. Preparing the dining room for evening service at Muscles Restaurant. Muscles closed last year, Scott Schuckman for the Washington Post. That's bad. Chef Robert Wiedmeyer left and Chef de Cuisine Paul Stearman in the kitchen at Muscles. Scott Schuckman for the Washington Post. One of the biggest reasons why the restaurant industry suffered across the board everywhere is just the cost of going out to eat, says chef and restaurateur Robert Wiedmeyer, who closed two restaurants in Washington last year, including his fine dining flagship Muscles. Right? Fine dining. His fine dining flagship Muscles. It's expensive to go out to eat. It used to be if you went to a really fine dining restaurant, and it's still like that. You would drop $300 to $400, Wiedmeyer adds, but now you are dropping $250 for four at a mediocre restaurant. But his part, Hamilton is trying to grow from this experience, but he also urges civic leaders to do some soul searching too. DC needs to decide if it's going to be a city full of big corporate chain places or local mom and pops. He says, if it's the former, family-style places are just going to go away. Meanwhile, Hamilton is exploring ways others might still benefit from his mistakes. I'm trying to come up with some kind of arrangement to have somebody who is more savvy at staffing coming in. Staffing come in. Tumbleton says he left the door open to participating in a future venture at Brooklyn's finest, but stressed that any new owners would need to be clear-eyed about what it takes to survive in the DC dining scene. They are going to come in here knowing that we don't ring as much as we did, he says. The bucket for farewell tips on the hostage stand at Brooklyn's finest. Deb Lindsay for the Washington Post. Stephanie Coleman, Tumbleton's wife, summed up the roller coaster ride that was Brooklyn's finest. A rough start, it was met with a lot of suspicion. Some bumps along the way, like the sudden passing of longtime general manager Amy Bollard last summer, and a few genuine screams, we were making a lot of money. The hardest part, she says, is saying goodbye to something that was truly a familiar affair. It's not just financial, Coleman says. It is our community. It's not just financial, right? I would have said it's just not finance, right? It's just not financial. It's not just financial. It's just not financial. Federica Coco contributed to this report. So it's quite a long article. There are no unknown words or expressions, but many of them I just want to remember, right? It's just not financial. It all adds up. Many restaurateurs have relied on a combination of strategies like a cutting staff, raising menu prices, or adding a service charge to checks, something like that, like a cutting staff. A single spot in the single spot restaurant, not just one single restaurant, right? Restaurateurs, farewell, staff going, the tipped minimum wage, raise the minimum wage, something like that. So let's go back and go over all the expressions that I decided to remember. It's just not financial. It's just not financial. Fine dining, trendy, flagship, fine dining, flagship muscles, fine dining, flagship muscles. It all adds up. It all adds up. Cut back on spending. Cut back on spending. Spend their discretionary income. Spend their discretionary income. More robust and trendy restaurants. More robust and trendy dining scenes. More robust and trendy dining scenes. When the pandemic did its worst damage to the hospitality industry, when the pandemic did its worst damage to the hospitality industry. A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means the business simply stopped serving alcohol. A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means the business simply stopped serving alcohol. Built on decades old model. Voters upended the proposal, right? The voters upended the model. The voters upended that model. Banks has crunched the numbers. In the tipped minimum wage, the combined payroll kicked in. Banks has crunched the numbers. In the tipped minimum wage, the combination tipped employees, right? It's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, right? Tipped employees. Tipped employees. Now we just do one turn. Now we just do one turn. Another crowd would file in around 9 p.m. Democratic at large. Restaurateurs, their stair step, right? Their stair step increases. Their stair step increases. Step function, right? Their stair step increase. Payroll costs. Overall, added payroll, combined payroll. Self-described regular. Self-described regular. He builds the critically acclaimed corner spot as an unpretentious go-to where he would grab a burger or beer with the friends on a whim. On a whim. A trade war of attrition. Well, that's it. A trade war of attrition is a loser for both countries. A self-described regular he builds on a whim. Restaurateurs, their stair-step increases payroll costs. Democratic at large. Another crowd would file in around 9 p.m. Now we just do one turn. Now we just do one turn, he laments. Tipped employees. It's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. Tipped employees. Banks has crunched the numbers, right? I have crunched the numbers. In the tipped minimum wage, the combined payroll in the tipped minimum wage kicked in. Built on decades old model. Built on decades old model. Voters upended the model, right? The voters upended that model. A cancellation typically means the business closed, but in rare instances, it means that they simply stopped serving alcohol. When the pandemic did its worst damage to the hospitality industry, cut back on spending, spend their discretionary income, more robust and trendy dining scenes. It all adds up. Fine dining, fine dining flagship muscles. It's just not financial. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Tomorrow is a hump day. Bye bye.